I'm Nick Hernandez, and you're listening to the Positivity Matters podcast. On this show, we explore well being philosophically, scientifically, and have conversations with scholars in that area and also with people who are applying that scholarship in a variety of settings. Today, I have Josha Sietsma, professor in philosophy, who has taken an interest in something near and dear to Nebraska. That is the both the Capitol and Memorial Stadium. And there's something that both of them have in common, and that is a Nebraska philosopher whose thoughts we are familiar with today. And I find it fascinating the various ways in which the that your work has engaged with this philosopher who has not been around for a long time, but yet his work still speaks. The his books in set in paper and set in stone are resonant still to this day. Just before we started the podcast, I'd posed the question about the meaning of the sower on top of the Capitol, and to me, I was saying that my thought about it is something like it. If the Capitol is sort of a book about what does it mean to live a good life, does the sower symbolize potentially something like having grasped the good life, sort of feeling a drive maybe to be able to pass that on to others? So I see the sower as maybe like casting seeds of hope or something along those lines toward that end. But that's my little introduction. I'll let you introduce yourself and maybe dive into any or none of that if you feel so moved.
Well, thank you for your kind words and yeah, the introduction. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, well, I do live in the Netherlands. I was really fascinated by the Capitol. It's just to me, it's a unique building. And then I really like your question because it triggered the different discussions about the solar that found and came across over the years. I've been researching the Capitol for 8 years now, I guess. Maybe a bit shorter, but give or take. I mean, if we're being really like Freud, we go all into this phallus symbolism, right? So then sower would be something like the natural offspring of reading the book is that we all come to fruition, that the good life is the embodiment of what it means to be a good person. And then I can't be Well, it's just, I think it's really biblical in that sense. It's better to give than to take. For me, that's the essence of a sower, right?
Hmm.
Better to give than to take. And well, gosh, if our leaders would have that mantra today, and it's easy to point to national leaders, but I'm speaking about leaders and I think that's maybe a really Alexander point. Leadership starts within your own home, within your own bedroom, with yourself, right? So, um, how would it look like if I myself would come to full fruition? But I could go hours about. I think this would be more the Freud discussion. I've also read into the discussion, Nick. I'm not sure if you've heard about this. That like the artistic discussion that the sower is not even a real thing. His pose is so unnatural. It's ugly. I love the sower, and I'm all about aesthetics, and I think it's a beautiful thing on top of it. And hey, if the pose is not right, well, who cares? I don't care. And um, then you could go into the functional. It's like, is it really vending? Like storms and lightning, and it's a beautiful ornament. But to me, I think, and that's maybe my final take on it. To me, the sower is just well, it's not maybe my final thing. The funny thing is, Alexander, right after going to Nebraska, he went down south, right, to start this all girls college, Scripps College.
Hmm.
And till today, the logo of the Scripps College is a sower. He took that with him from Nebraska to the south to California, and it's next to LA, Scripps College. And I was talking to Megan Hunt, the senator, about this the other day. because she came across this seal and on Twitter, on X now. And I said, well, this is, there it is. Yeah. And I think when you combine Scripps College sower with Nebraska sower, right? To me, that is there you can see the real meaning of the sower, okay? Because a new life begins with reading. So my final take would be, but maybe, but then I'm not sure. But it's like almost seems like a joke, like like the book, he was really explicit about the building being a book. And what is sowing? Well, from sowing comes new life. And the seal of Scripps College has that literally written, right? In its core.
Hmm.
But the question is, does new life begin at a college or does it begin with a building? But then you have to answer first the question, what is education really? What does it really mean to learn? And I think the reason why the Capitol is still captivating and still out there is because it every day, every time you go to see it, it challenges you to learn something new. And I think that's the whole idea about education. And that's why I love Alexander, because I was talking this morning to a friend of mine, his name is Joel. And I said, Joel, the whole purpose of teaching is kind of postponing pleasure. As a professor, as a teacher, you kind of postpone the pleasure of what learning really means because sometimes it takes time for it to see. And that's like the analogy to sowing. The so the capital, Alexander says, is a warning, right? To quick capitalism, to quick fixes, to quick shopping till you drop. There's a I used to really like Reverend Billy Talon. He's not, yeah, well, he's a reverend of the Church of Stop Shopping. Uh, I've met him once. He made the cross over the pond to Germany, and he's an activist in New York, I guess, at this moment. And the idea of Stop Shopping Church really coincides at certain levels with Alexander, like consumerism and all materialism. It's pretty shallow because you get this today and tomorrow you need a new one. To me, what sticks most about Reverend Billy is you don't need to buy a gift to give a gift, right? So this whole idea of buying gifts to give a gift, he ends that idea. I love it. And how did I get to this? Well, I see the sower as a warning against, yeah, quick fixes. Learning is investing. It's not easy, and teaching is a something noble. I feel, you know, um, some students will see me more during that time than their own family or their own parents because they're at school all the time. And I think it's something to be aware of and to be I think it's a humble experience because there's a certain element of trust that is granted. So I would also add that the sower is about well, in my book I tell, or I write that the capital is a question mark. So I really see the sower in that sense too. So what is the sower really questioning? Well, what does it take to sow? What does it take to grow eventually? And what does it mean to live a good life? So those three, I always like analogies of three, by the way. But I think feel those three steps all come together. Like, okay, what does it need? What do you need to have seeds, and what does it take to grow? And if you go back to Freud, well, what does it take to take a seed? Well, certain adulthood developments, maturity. I'm not saying I'm mature, but I guess the capital, in a sense, is also an invitation to think about what does it take to be a mature citizen, right? Instead of simplifying the debate, like like, like this dualism the whole time, like you're either wrong or you're either good. Well, life is more complex, man. It's just so much more complex. Um, my daughter asked me the other day, what was the first movie you watched? I think it was The Little Mermaid. I know it might sound stupid, but and Reverend Billy used to be against Walt Disney. I'm not sure if he still is. Well, I'm not doing him justice. He should speak for himself. But the reason why I like Little Mermaid is because I guess as a kid, you kind of get the feeling of, hey, life is complicated, man. Like, there's this mermaid, she falls in love, and but she's not human, but yes, she has human feelings. And then there's this evil octopus, and yeah, it's black and white, like, but it's not. And how do you end the spell? Well, love. Well, yeah, I guess, yeah. Um, uh, so I know this is a really long answer to your question. Yeah, no, so the sword to me, well, you could tell, you can go hours and hours thinking about it, and it really depends on the approach you take. I like the combination of approaches because at the end of the day, I don't really think there's the right answer to it. So I guess that's my take, Nick, I think. But I really love the Scripps College having the sower in it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. That was something that I somehow I'd missed that.
Yeah.
Here
Yeah. And
begins
if you,
new life. That's awesome. I don't know what the classic virtue would be that's associated with this, but maybe like prudential wisdom that once you have something to pursue that you have cultivated skill in both choosing what to pursue and then also how to pursue it. There's a body of work coming out of the psychology department in Kansas that has this notion that being able to envision meaningful goals and to envision pathways to those goals, that is something valuable. Also, action. And then, as you encounter challenges, the ability to recreate pathways to the goals, and that with iteration, that that elevates one's sense of agency or willpower, and in that intermediary phase where you're having accomplishment, that does a little bit of filling your own bucket, uh, like in terms of your emotional well-being. And altogether, the psychologist Rick Snyder, he's been calling that construct hope. There's a lot of like cognitive habits in that, and so I don't think it quite fits with the everyday notion of hope, which I think is something like the future can be better. I think that's what something along those lines is what most people think of when they think of hope. They think of it as a belief. And I think his construct is something that might help a person come to have the belief that my life can be better. Um, and maybe just like the extent to which one pursues that, maybe that eventually expands out into concern for others, perhaps. Um, but the motto from Kansas is ad astra per aspera, and I think it, if I remember from first grade, it means something like to the stars through difficulty.
yeah.
Uh, and then that to me sort of resonates a little bit with our focus on the good life here in Nebraska. Um, and we seem to be doing something of a decent job with that. Allegedly, we're as a state have the ninth highest well-being of states in the U.S. It tracks pretty closely with GDP per capita in our case. Um, so, how do you define the good life? There's all sorts of conceptualizations of that, but Hartley Burr Alexander, I think he kind of portrays some of the ingredients of that in the dome of the rotunda in the Capitol and integrates the great virtues of Jerusalem, faith, hope, and love, with the virtues of Athens, wisdom, justice, temperance, courage, and I guess throws in magnanimity as a because an octagon needs eight. So, uh, and then I see the sower as the symbolic representation of virtue you might call generativity, sort of the drive to transmit and build up the good in others. But that's kind of, I think, his conceptualization of the good life. And in order to secure and pursue that, we need we need something to prevent that from being destroyed, like a state, perhaps. There's the floor. Like, what's the floor for? How do we create a foundation on which to pursue the good life? It feels like that's kind of like what justice is about. And then like his emphasis on beauty and the importance of beauty and aesthetics. It's like I feel like his from his poetry and the words that you first encounter as you approach the Capitol. In beauty I walk. It's kind of like a book, but what is your take on kind of the shape of the good life? Like, what, when you sort of like think about all the complexity that he goes through, and then um getting to the heart of it, and succinctly, is it, would you say it's something like the virtues that he has depicted there, or is there something simpler that summarizes what the essence of living the good life means to him?
That's an interesting question. And as you were talking, I wrote down three notes. Let me get to your question with a detour because I think that works best. I think foremost, the most important virtue portrayed indirectly is humility. Only with humility can you really learn, because I feel it's a condition.
Hmm.
A condition to learn is being able to tell yourself, "I do not know yet, but I do want to know." And that's where I feel uh, our task as teachers really is. We What is a good teacher? We all know what a good teacher looks like. We all have them from the past. And most often it is someone that is personal, that relates to us, that is enthusiastic about his job or his task and makes connection. And I feel that the good teacher, in that sense, understands literally understands the pupil. Um, I'll just leave it there because I think that's to me the main virtue. Second, um, for me, the kernel aspect of hope is really expectation, right? And I agree with you. Expectation is nothing else than uh, willing or wanting something to become, right? So it's the becoming of something. So I agree with you. And uh, thirdly, and this is, I'll come to your question now, the good life is not up for a modernist approach. And I think that's really interesting because we live in this, some say, postmodernistic society where after Foucault, relativism, is kind of um, at the center stage of philosophy. Your truth and I mine. But Alexander is really clear about that. He's like, no, 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 that's it's not up for grabs. Is there a simple? I like your question. Is there a simple one-liner to what is the good life? Um, um, well, you made me think because I have never had someone ask me that question before, and I feel like the answer to that question is not on the Capitol, but is on another building we have not yet discussed. But I might be wrong. It's because I really think I really think, well, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, yes, this is my take. I think the the simple answer would be go to Memorial Stadium and look on the northeast corner, look up, and remember yourself that Memorial Stadium is a memorial, and not and a stadium, but also a memorial. And there's four lines, right? Their lives they held, their country's trust, they kept its faith, they died its heroes. I have a cheat sheet here, so that's why I know it. But um, and I think going back, well, we're honoring people that considers others higher than themselves. So this is where humbleness, humility comes back. I'll be honest, Nick, I'm not good in being humble myself. I think it's one of the most tough virtues to pursue because, yeah, just because. Um, my dad, I find, is an example of humility and being humble. But sometimes I find it disgusting. And I feel bad about saying that, but that's sometimes just how I think. But I feel like if we're honoring people that gave their lives so the best of themselves uh, for someone else, and that could be the country, but the country at the end does not exist, right? It's the people. Um, well, that to me is the good life, consider the other. And again, I'm pretty sure it transcends all religions, but and not but, and it really is for me the main aspect of the capital. Consider other ones more important than yourself. So if you look to the panels on the outside, most of the panels are about that. Las Casas, hey, Native Americans, Indians, I don't care which term you use, they are maybe even more important or more human than you. People with another color of skin, same. People in power are, you know, uh, they should consider all citizens. So I feel like if you look at I'm looking now at the external aspect of the capital. I think the main message is consider the other one higher than yourself, right? Isn't it? That's what I think is the main aspect. And it's also on Memorial Stadium. And that's funny because in sports, we celebrate individuals, right? And uh, but we all know that individual excellence is dependent on the collective. And I think in modern times, I'm not sure how it is in America, but I'm assuming in America that's a really tough take. I mean, greatest quarterback, Mahomes, maybe. I'm not sure, but let's say Mahomes. Yeah, he's really good. He's making the millions. He depends on his team every play. He depends on the scouts, on the guys on the and girls on the sideline, up in the boxes looking. I mean, what? It takes a plane to fill to win a game, right? And uh, and for me, that's the same as the slogan on the Southwest. You know, yeah, victory. We're not play. I'll be honest. I'm not playing just because it's about playing. I don't like that motto. I play to win. Um, uh, and but you can only win if you consider others more important than you too. And that's why I like sumo so much. Like the unwritten rule in sumo is try to not express your emotions after a win or loss.
Mm.
Uh, I love that in sumo because to me it shows that's the utmost respect you can bring to your adversary. And the funny thing is, you need your opponent to win, right? So that's For me, that's the classic, not dissectomy, but classic clash in sports. You need the other to win. And
Hmm.
uh, and I want to win. So you need the better the opponent, the better the win. So you're hoping for a good opponent, and I remember when I did judo, that's you greet him at the beginning, you greet the referee because the referee, that's why, like baseball, I don't like this whole automatic thing in baseball. It kind of, and I think this is exactly what I'm not sure, but uh, Alexander is warning against. Life is not to be perfect. That's not the point. The point is not, so the good life is not about being perfect. The good life is not about something which I have a tough time believing, empathy. That's not the point. The good life is not about that at all. It's about considering others higher than yourself. That might be empathetic at times. Sometimes it might not be. I'll leave that up to others to debate because I think I'm pretty sure people will find that interesting or debateful, worthful. Debate. I'm not sure what the right English word is. But like in baseball now with the automatic strike zone and ball system, we have this idea that the game has to be perfect. Whereas I feel like no, the judge, the referee, is someone. It's like it's. And this isn't sumo. It's like to me, this is someone holy, and we're not expecting them to be gods at all. But they're aspect of the game, and we should embrace that. And to me, I think baseball is the perfect analog of life. There's this beautiful book. It's called Baseball as the Road to God from a
Hmm.
professor at New York State or New York University. I'm not sure. And I really believe that, uh, like in this wish for eliminating flaws or errors if they already exist in the game, we go to this computer system. And what's well, one of the main arguments is, an error of the referee might cost you millions. Well, hey, that never was the point of sports, millions. That never was the idea. I'm not saying you shouldn't earn your millions. I'm not against it. But I feel like baseball is a road to God, and the Capitol both warn against this whole I'm repeating myself, this consumerism of like everything is about money, and therefore everything needs to be perfect, and therefore what is the current aspect of life? Success. And what does success look like? Oh, rich, me rich. Well, then you're back to your virtues and vices. um, I know I'm ranting. I'm kind of ranting, I know. um, but
I,
so
I
the
like it.
shape, your question, the shape. Yeah. um, the shape of the good life is something like you go first, like that, something like that. Or which color would you like on my building? Or how does beauty look like to you? Or how do we cross this river? And if you go back to the panels on the Capitol, something like, should we let everyone that lives have a say in how we live? Probably, yeah. That's a good one. I think we should. Yeah, let's do it. And should we take matters in our own hands if we don't agree with each other? Alexander's pretty clear. No, no, that's not a good thing. So the rule of law is right on the right with the Orestia or the Orestia. I'm not sure how to pronounce it in English. Is right on the Capitol building. It's the beginning of the rule of law. Don't take matter in your own hands. Does that mean you're not allowed to have guns? No, that's not the point. Uh, and I guess it's also a warning for our lawgivers, right? You're also a human being as a lawgiver. And then, the circle comes around again. So they need to be humble too. Okay. How does that look like? Etc.
One of the paths in which I found it necessary for me to walk as I stumble my way through life is the journey of recovery. So
Sure.
for
Yeah.
me, Nick and spirits do not mix well. So I've been in one of those 12-step recovery programs for, as of yesterday, 5 years. One of the things that stood out to me in the literature of that recovery program is a definition of humility that goes something like humility amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. I'd
Sure.
never
Yeah.
heard humility put that way. And when I hear it put that way in the
Yeah.
context of the 12-step program, there's the process of admitting powerlessness over something, which is
Yeah.
challenging. That's but then there's also this idea of surrender to win. And then there's like an assessment uh, of one's moral character inventory, and then the idea in those areas where there have been lapses, restitution. Um, and so they're, I think, meant to be humility inducing experiences and all those sort of three big movements of the recovery journey.
Nick, restitution
Yeah.
or redemption?
Well, there's a little bit of a notion of restitution in terms of making amends when there others have been harmed as your character defects have been
Yeah.
wreaking havoc in the world. And it's the redemption is sort of the cumulative effect of the admission of powerlessness, the assessment of shortcomings, and the attempt to make restitution. And that's that's the my own meager attempts at intentionally pursuing humility have been along those lines, and it's not a virtue that I would have intentionally chosen to pursue if I were capable of living a life where it wasn't a necessity. But this definition that uh, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be, that part opens up an upside of the story, and like the like the pursuit of beauty in going beyond just like not falling to my, I guess, inclinations that are just about me, where there's no consideration of the impact that those pursuits have on others. It's kind of like there's a suggestion in one's, prayer life, if that's a part of your worldview, that all our prayers extend beyond asking for things for ourselves, but if there's something that we are asking for, to be able to um, only ask for those things if it can also be of benefit to others. And I think just that line
Mm.
of thinking is something that is, for me, in the predicament in which I find myself. I will surrender all other virtues and pursuits and values to uh, the god of pleasure, let's say.
Sure.
That one particular pleasure. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's been my experience with that one. So I like that you named an unnamed virtue on the Capitol.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, well, oftentimes it's what is it not saying, right? What is it not saying? And and when we question that, it is saying a lot. And I think, when I listen to your 12 steps, hey, cast a stone, right? Who is without faults? Cast a stone. Go ahead. And yeah. Well, it's like well, this is a philosophy podcast anyway, so at least a bit of it. it reminds me of Aristotle, like the idea of human beings being a political animal, or I think the political animal is a wrong translation. It's more like a community-based animal. And I think, and that leads to what I feel like you're indirectly saying, like we always have, we're always in relationship to, fourth wise. This is the only exception I'd make in my three-step approach. But it's always, I guess there's nothing wrong with asking something for yourself first. Firstly, I mean, secondly, life is always in regards or relationship to someone else, to the other, right? And then thirdly, life is always in regard to, and I feel you say like, how did you call that in the 12 steps? You got to be, you can't conquer yourself, or you have to be um,
Surrender to win.
surrender to win. Yeah. Well, I guess that's the aspect of God or deities or the highest, right? The idea that we can't know it all. Maybe there is someone that knows it all, but we don't know. And that's where, hope and comes together and faith, etc. And I feel there's always a fourth one, which is nature. And I think that one is often overlooked. And looking at nature crises all over. I think we should not forget that we also, when it comes to virtues, always have to relate to nature too, right? So, yeah, cast a stone, man. That person that thinks of himself or herself as perfect, or you know, my favorite saying by Alexander sounds paraphrase is, "Life is to be sure an adventure." And I think that's the whole point. Life is
Mm.
such an adventure. And TV makes people so stupid and boring. I know this is really judgmental right now. I love TV, by the way. But you get what I mean. Like we work from 8 to 5, come home, have dinner, and crash on the couch kind of idea. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I do struggle it personally with myself. Like, life is to be an adventure, man. There's so much to be discovered. And you can discover that through TV. I'm not saying it's wrong, but you kind of feel my struggle, like there's so beauty for me is really what you were saying, like in the deepness of things. And I don't really think it has to be so complicated. It's not that complicated. You go outside on a summer dark night, especially in Nebraska, where light pollution is so low. The Milky Way is the biggest gift to see, like it's awesome. And if that doesn't make you humble, right? That's, I feel like I'm not saying the stars, the Milky Way have a purpose, but if they would have a purpose, it would be to make us in awe. Like, hey, there's so much out there we don't even know. What are we actually looking at? But it is awesome. I have the same idea with the feeling with Northern Lights, like, wow. And of course, you can all rationally explain it. I'm pretty sure people can. But I love what Charles Taylor, the Canadian philosopher, calls this is the enchantments, right? And I don't want to lose that. And to me, the whole building, the whole Capitol is about enchantment. There are things in and outside the building. We don't know if they even exist. So Alexander, right? The bisons originally he wanted them with wings. You know the story probably, right, Nick? And the commission goes like, yeah, but people won't be able to relate to bisons with wings. They don't exist. Yeah, that's the whole point. Like unicorns, they don't exist. Who cares? Like I love Narnia for that reason. Like uh, again, it's not about throwing the perfect pitch and having it recognized by a computer. That's not the point. The point is having Otani hitting 40, 50 home runs in a season. That's magic. Maybe 60, maybe 70, and we're all in it. We don't want a computer hitting. We want to see that magic. That's why people go to the stadium. And I don't really care if a game takes 2.5 hours or three. I'm in it for the till the end. It's fun. So the enchantment of yeah. So Charles Taylor goes. His point is the world is being disenchanted, right? There's this disenchantment. It's people are just busy with affirming and confirming their ordinary life, whereas we're invited, and I feel again the capital is an invitation to explore this big, beautiful mess, what is called life, you know. And before we know it, we're gone, Nick. That's like I'm 42 now, and I hope I'm at 1/3 of my life, but I dare say probably halfway, And this is it. This is it.
It
This is
reminds
it.
me of the first time I visited a Catholic church as a teenager, and the my friend said, "Well, you can't go up for communion, but you can go up for this other thing." And they put ashes on my head and said, "From dust you came, and to dust you shall return." No one's ever told me that before. It was kind of maybe one of those things that is meant to invoke a little humility.
Oh. And going back to your first question, like the point of the sower, if we go into seeding and the germination of seeds, uh, we should ask a biologist, but beginning and the end of life, we are totally dependent. So to you and me, if we have a natural life and the natural life is given and granted to us, we will become dependent totally on someone else again when we're older. I think about my grandma, she's 96. And there's this whole regression. She's like a baby in that sense, totally dependent. And I hope my kids, take care of me when I'm older. And that, so as a parent too, it makes me humble. Like, hey, I mean, I don't need that, you know, remembrance every day, but you know, I want to take good care of my kids, as I hope they will also take good care of me. And yes, we can have this whole welfare state system of a computer and the perfect care system when you're old or a robot. But at the end, it's back, it goes back to the relationship and the dependence. We don't, at the end of our lives, we don't want a computer or a robot. We don't want that perfection. No, we want that warm hand on our body that, might be imperfect with scars and maybe dirty. Where was that Catholic church, Nick? Where did you go to? Where was that? Do you remember?
That was visiting with a friend in when I was in high school, and that was in Olathe, Kansas.
Uh,
That was the town that I was born in, and sort of was raised around that area in the suburbs of Kansas City on the Kansas side. And I wound up going to a little Catholic liberal arts college north of Kansas City called Benedictine College. And I went with the intention of doing 3 years engineering there, then going off to University of Missouri at Rolla and finishing up in engineering. And I'd had a sort of a bit of a bit of a comeback academically with sort of an early experience of the adverse effects of spirits and other intoxicants, and uh, began the recovery journey when I was a junior in high school, and wasn't thinking I was going to be finishing that part of the journey of life, and um, in getting into recovery, or at least I'll say I put down the spirits. uh, well, things got a lot better academically, and put myself through band camp and engineering camp that summer between my junior and senior years. And what happened was the grade that was, I believe, like a C or a D in physics wound up becoming an A plus the second semester. And so I thought, like, wow, I'm really good at this. This is, I should do that. Um, Most recently, the way that I've come to think about things like that is something more along the lines of, like, what would the world be like if everyone did the good things they're good at and enjoyed?
Sure.
And I didn't pause to ask myself if I really enjoyed physics.
Mm,
It was just sort of this assumption. It's like, oh, I'm good at this. I should do that.
right.
But it was like, you know, there wasn't that enjoyment part. So that uh slowly I found my way to this um well-being, this idea of a science of well-being, sort of
Mm,
the empirical attempt to get at human flourishing. Uh because I had a hard time sort of letting go and, letting the muses have their way and embracing divergent thinking. I've heard it put that way. It's been
okay.
this, I want there to be like a right answer. So I want the convergent thinking. So I think that's what sort of drew me to this. Like, I feel kind of lost. So I want to really know, like, what should one do? Now maybe a little more complete question would be, what does it mean to live a good life?
Yeah.
Uh, and eventually it's like I've kind of let go of that desire for the right answer. Uh, the categorical imperative was sort of the meat was too lean there. So it's like, you know, while uh what in philosophy at the time when Hartley Alexander was working, the Western philosophical tradition seems to be trying to distance itself from romanticism and
Sure.
myth. And it's like he was going like directly against it. He's kind of a rebel a little bit. But it turns out that I've come to the place where it feels uh like good art, good philosophy. It's sort of it's reworking our understanding of what it means to pursue a good life as we're in process of creating new technologies. And um it's like this constant need for art and philosophy to give us a sense of uh, where are we in this journey that you could say is. It feels like it's like building the plane while we're flying it. Kind of, it's one way that I've heard it put. Uh, so yeah, so I've kind of like loosened up a bit, and I still have this interest in positive psychology or well-being science. And little bit of trivia: the first positive psychology summit took place in Lincoln, Nebraska. This was back in 1999. And the Gallup organization hosted this event. The then president of the American Psychological Association, Martin Seligman, sort of kicked off, I guess, his time as the head of that organization for the year that he was at the helm with a statement, something along the lines of psychology is half baked. And by that, he meant that we've done, uh, in terms of our expenditure of intellectual effort, um, we've done quite a bit to pursue an understanding of mental illness and how to alleviate the suffering of that, but we have not really done such a hot job of exploring if there's another dimension to mental health, which we might call mental well-being,
Sure.
that might be related to but distinct from mental illness. we've not devoted as much energy to that in that direction to the mental well-being. And so I think he wanted to bring that out. And this the owner of the Gallup organization had a company established in Lincoln and eventually bought the Gallup poll, became the Gallup organization, was very much aligned with that sort of way of approaching studying the human. His this was Don Clifton, was the entrepreneur, uh, former professor in education psychology. His quip was something like, "What if we studied what was right with people?" So, this idea of
Yeah,
like studying our strengths. Um,
sure. Yeah.
as you were sharing earlier, and going from the Memorial Stadium and football to sumo to baseball, uh, one of the strengths that he has in the Strengths Finder is competition, and
Hmm.
I'm guessing that might be one of your strengths. Like, there's like the various, like, you know human to human competition, but then there's also this, like, the inner sense of the upside of that definition of humility. It's like that sort of question of what can we become, and the inner competition to be the most alive, the most human that we can be. It feels like is the like, what's the true good of competition? Well, for some it's intrinsically satisfying, and then I think it sounds like that may be kind of how you're constituted. For myself, it's not up there in my top strengths, and the strengths in his thing are basically what kind of character strengths are bring you a sense of joy and or meaning. And his survey ranks these 34 things, sort of totally subjective to yourself, and the idea is it's supposed to give you a ranking, a subjective ranking for yourself. And then the idea is, like, in terms of our psychological expenditure, by putting our energy into those top strengths, like, that's sort of we get the biggest psychological return for the energy expenditure, and maybe wind up with more energy than when we began, perhaps. um
Right.
I think in Greek culture, the agon was competition. uh One of the philosophers here in Lincoln contrasted it with charis, which would be like grace, favor, kindness. And that the to your point, uh, winning requires a competitor. Um, and she was kind of trying to say that, like, I think some of, like, the literal competition was meant to be taken symbolically for that inner sort of struggle to become the best the best me that I can be, a little bit. And that sometimes there are these moments where, in the middle of the struggle, there's a recognition of the sort of superseding power of charis. I believe at some point, is it the Iliad, where there's an exchange of armor, like one of the
Yeah,
warriors has like gold armor and the other has bronze or something like that.
sure is. Yeah.
She takes that as a moment of sort of that recognition of charis, sort of as a, maybe a deeper thing, actually. uh Maybe like the surface level of Greek culture is competition, but there's this underlying dynamic there as well. That's me. There's me riffing some. So, but tell us a little more on the nuts and bolts of things. I see you've got a story, 21panels.org. That's 21 the numbers,
Yeah.
and panels spelled out.org. And this is where we can see some of your work and thought around the Capitol, and uh, literally the Capitol, a model, and this is kind of uh this is really interesting to see. It's like, you know, beauty in literature than beauty in the architecture. Yeah, tell us more on the practical things and like
Well, first, Nick, thanks for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it, and thanks for letting me tell something about the practical parts. Well, as you said, 21panels.org. It has my both books on well, both editions on the Capitol, which is Think, Define, Choose. Those are literally words from Alexander. Um, the second edition is a cheaper one. It's the same as the first. The first one is almost sold out. The second is coming out, well, is already out. And I've decided to add Action, Victory, Glory to that, which is a special edition for Memorial Stadium, kind of commemorate the start of football season in September. So I want to get that out there during a state fair in Grand Island, if I'm not mistaken. Last week of August, I'll be there. You can get your copy there, or just order it online or with Grow Nebraska, which I'm affiliated with. They're really friendly and help me out because, well, I'm on this side of the pond. So, 5,000 miles way out. Um, uh, and well, in the designing, we thought about all the colors we use are the natural colors, what you also can find back in the Capitol itself. The letter type is as designed by the architect. So the books are really a nod to the Capitol. And the paper model, I thought, what was something fun for kids, but also for others that don't really want to read but still work on the Capitol. I thought, what, paper model is just like a puzzle. And it took a lot of designing, more than 2 years to design the paper model, but I'm really proud it's done. You don't need any glue or scissors. You can just puncture everything out with your fingers. It's really easy. It'll take you though 90 minutes to set up, so it's a fun thing to do on a rainy afternoon after you visit the Capitol and get your copy and just build it. And it stands out. It's durable. It's sturdy. You can put it on the coffee table at home or in your study or in your kids' room, and it's just a fun thing. And it has all the 21 panels numbered on the outside, so uh, adding to the experience of visiting the Capitol. And I've come to find that those panels are often overlooked. People go out there and look up their county and that's it. Whereas if you look just little bit further up, I know there's more than just those 21 panels, but I've tried to focus on those 21 panels. And um, you can reach out to me through the website and I can get you your copy. And payment is really easy. I love modern technology, Nick. I think it's awesome. I bought a new shaver the other day. I'm like, man, oh, I love technology. So cool how they do that. And yeah, you can go through my blog too. I've added some stories linking the panels to some chapters in the book. So, Alexander on should we ban books? Should we do something with Christmas? How about teachers? What is a good teacher? Just some small blurbs and ideas, and I need to get those updated here sometime soon. But I'd love for all you all to come and meet me in person. That's the best. I'll be in Nebraska last week of August, so I'm willing to speak and engage and come see us at the state fair. I'll be there with my son, and come see me speak at the Capitol on Friday 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. And it'll be fun, and let's see if we can have an interesting conversation. I used to tell my students the best classes are with the ones with good questions, and I love your questions, Nick, and I appreciate your deep thought, and that makes for a good conversation. So
thanks for letting me riff a little bit. That's sometimes when a guest says something, it just take off. We'll see. I may have to I may have to edit myself out of this. I feel like
No,
there's
no,
a
no, no.
bit too much there.
I've been ranting way too much today. And but I
um,
appreciate your time. And we're a 7 hour difference, I see. So I'm gonna head out for dinner soon. And
can I
of
pull you into one more
course,
reflection? Is that a
go for it.
possibility?
Sure, yeah, yeah,
All right. So this is my attempt to distill the elements of the good life
yeah.
as simply and as comprehensively as possible. After a bit of wordsmithing, I've forced these 9 basic goods into the acronym Happy Life, and so this sort of lightly does it feel kind of comprehensive and irreducibly simple. But so H is for health, physical and mental. A is for aesthetic experience or natural and created beauty. Play, I think there's something about the idea of the interesting that may be something that various modes of play have in common. And I see curiosity, creativity, gameplay, and humor as some primary modes of play. Then pleasure, so liking, positive emotions, happiness, emotional well being, all those things sort of giving it the label of pleasure for all that. Yes saying, I think, is something about the values and goals that we say yes to in thought, and then the actions that we take towards those ends. And then life, just as a sort of a stand in for the web of life as a whole.
Yeah, yeah.
I for information, knowledge, know how, F for friendship or good social health. I kind of think of a spectrum of positive social interaction from a pleasant encounter with the barista to, deep
Yeah.
friendship and then engagement, absorption, and flow. And I'll point listeners, if you'd like to comment on that, please destroy the happy life if you're willing to. Implode it, explode it, whatever. It's positivitymatters.org/happy life. And yeah, like as a, you know, does it feel like it's missing anything? Is it have too much fat on it as a trying to get
Well,
at it?
I'm saying this to myself, mostly, but uh, I like the simplicity of a happy life. So simplicity, to me, I'm not sure how to add that to your acronyms. Happy life, simplicity. Happy with simplicity. I don't know if you resonate at all, but happiness is in the small things I try to find. I don't like the word content too much. I struggle with that idea, mostly philosophically, but also practically. However, I do think a small cousin of being content is simplicity.
Hmm.
Uh, there's a certain happiness I feel like keeping life simple, like going on a hike in the mountains, and I'm pretty sure you can find all these acronyms right there, all of them. So I really appreciate what you've done there, and I think you're absolutely right. And maybe it's not so much an addition, but more like a verb or a multiplication, like being something a math equation. Like happy life versus or X simplicity.
Hmm.
What does that sum up to? And I think, and I like to end with that question, right? Because to me, Alexander is all about questions. So, what happens if you multiplicate happy life with simplicity? What do you get? We can do the yes saying.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, I think if I were to pick one, I would put friendship as the one that the simplicity I would just say friendship as an ideal and as a lived experience.
Right.
But thank
Yeah.
you
Of
so much for being a guest on the show. I appreciate your time.
course. No, you're welcome. And thank you so much.